Okay, great. Hey, Warren, if you could stop the share screen for just a second so we can see more faces, that would be wonderful. So thank you, everyone, and welcome for coming to the Maryland Horse Council's Harnessing the Power of the Sun to Power Your Horse Farm. We appreciate everybody joining in. For those of you who don't know me, I am Crystal Brummie Pickett. I am the acting secretary of the Horse Council. Some of you may know me as the former publisher of the Equerry. I am also now a proud owner of a Paradise solar system as well. And Paradise has agreed to come on and be a sponsor of the Horse Council this year. And we're very grateful to have them. And we're very grateful that all of you have signed up for this seminar. Like to give a special shout out to those who signed up and also donated to the Maryland Horse Council Foundation. I apologize if I mispronounce your name, but Kurt Koch, Alicia Schwartzbeck, Susan Payne, and Maureen Keenan. So thank you very much for donating to the new Horse Council Foundation. You'll be hearing more about this charitable branch of the Horse Council in the year to come. We are getting ready to get started. I'm going to introduce our hosts, but just a couple of things of housekeeping. When the seminar is going on, we are going to mute everybody. There will be an opportunity for questions and answers at the end of the seminar. If you think of a question and you're afraid you're going to forget it, down at the bottom of your screen, there's a little bar. Well, it might be different places on different people's screens, but look for something that says chat. And you can put your question in there, and we will be sure to monitor it so that your question does get asked. We are also going to have a couple trivia questions with prizes. And we will, for the same thing, you'll put your answer to the trivia question in the chat box, and the first person who puts it in correctly wins a prize. So with that being said, it is my great pleasure to introduce Warren Miller and Andy Schell from Paradise Energy Solutions. Warren, take it away.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you for the great introduction, and thank you everybody for taking the time out of your busy days to join us today to learn more about solar and how solar can potentially benefit you in your horse farm. And so, just to give you an idea, for the first, I'm going to spend about 15 minutes or so just talking, and as Crystal said, we'll open it up for questions at the end. So don't forget to chat those questions so you don't forget them. And we'll make sure we get all questions answered throughout this session. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. There we go. And let me open up the chat. For those of you, if you can't find the chat, you might have a more button. If you click more, the chat is under the more option. So there we go. All right, welcome again. Just a little bit about Paradise Energy Solutions. This is our crew. We are, there's about just under 100 of us at Paradise Energy Solutions. We were founded in 2009, and we serve the Mid-Atlantic region from 5 branch offices. And we've installed a little over 35 megawatts, probably closer to 40 megawatts of solar now. Our company values are faith, integrity, innovation, teamwork, and stewardship. And we really use those as our guiding principles to help us make decisions throughout the day, and just give you a sense of who you're working with when you choose to partner with Paradise Energy Solutions. But enough about us. I want to jump right in and start off with our first trivia question. So don't forget, you're going to chat the answer. So give yourself a minute to find the chat. And for this trivia, you're going to get the first person who enters the answer correctly will win a little Paradise package, which will include a solar charger, a solar hat, and some other giveaways. And the question is, if you live in Sydney, Australia, what is the ideal orientation or direction of your solar panels? North, east, south, or west? And it looks like Joe is the first person who got it correct. Congratulations, Joe. Joe is also, has some problem. I had some inside information, also a Paradise customer, Joe Herzog from Woodvale. So great job there, Joe. We'll make sure to get that to you. And Joe, since you are on the call, before I jump into the question and answers at the end, I'm going to open it up to you and unmute you for a few moments here. If you just want to share your experience with solar and with Paradise, give everybody some insight onto how that's worked for you, that'd be great. So congratulations. Everybody else is another exciting trivia question, which will be for a digital weather station coming up towards the end of the presentation. So great job, Joe.
Thank you.
All right. What we're going to talk about over the next 15 minutes or so is how solar works, some of the benefits of going solar, and then what a solar investment looks like. You can see below here some of the projects we've installed, pictures of them. But we'll start off, first of all, with how solar energy works, particularly in Maryland. And there's some different states work differently with the way they handle the overproduction of solar. But we're going to focus on Maryland, since that's where we are, and that's what the presentation is about. One second. I apologize, I did not put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Anyway, your solar panels, when they are exposed to light, they create energy in DC or direct current, which isn't what you want at your home or your business or your farm. You need your electricity in alternating current. That's what you use. And so the sun hits the solar panels, it creates energy, and it goes down to the inverter, number 2, which is this box over here, that converts that energy from DC to alternating current. And it then goes through your meter and to your home or your farm. And then whatever excess there is goes back out onto the grid, essentially providing electricity for your neighbors. And so what happens is, on a sunny day, your solar array, your solar system is going to produce much more electricity than you use at your location. And the extra electricity will get sent back to the grid. And then at nighttime or the wintertime, whenever you need to, you can take that electricity back. And there's a one-to-one exchange. There's no loss. So when you send a kilowatt hour to the grid during the day and you take it back at night, you don't lose anything. You get to use the grid, your utility company, as a free storage. And the way it works is we look at your historical usage, how we decide on how big to make a system or how to size a system, is we look at your electric bills for the last year or so, sometimes 2 years, and we see how much electricity you use in a year. And that's how we know how big to make your solar system, so that we'll generate enough electricity in a year to cover all the electricity that you use. And what happens in those summer months, when your solar panels are producing much more than you're using, and you're sending electricity back to the grid, your electric meter, your utility meter, will actually spin backwards. And then in the nighttime or the wintertime, when you're pulling electricity off the grid, it'll spin forwards and it'll net itself out. That's why they call it net metering. And so you'll have a credit that, say, in the summertime, when you produce more electricity than you're using, you'll see on your utility bill that you have a credit for 500 kilowatt hours or 1,000 kilowatt hours or however many kilowatt hours you sent back to the grid. And then you can use from that bank of kilowatt hours. It's almost like rollover minutes. You can add to it, you can take out, it rolls over month to month. And then in Maryland, at the end of the year, which is April for the utility companies, if you produced more than you used for the year, they will write you a check for the difference for your overproduction. But keep in mind that when they write you a check back for the overproduction, they only pay you for the wholesale cost or the supply cost of the electricity that you're sending back. And so from an investment perspective, it makes the most sense to size your system at about 100% of the energy that you use. You are allowed to, in Maryland, build a system to cover 200% of the electricity. So if you're planning on expanding or growing, or you can see yourself using more electricity in the future, you do have the flexibility to build a system to accommodate that. But from an investment perspective, it makes the most sense to install a system that's right around 100%, 95%, 105% of your electric use. And that way you take full advantage of the full cost of electricity being produced by your solar system. So that's really how solar works and net metering works in Maryland. And don't forget, I am keeping an eye on the chat. If you guys have questions, feel free to put them in there, and we'll get to those as well. Some of the benefits of going solar are long-term electric rates. Electric savings. When we design your system to cover 100% of your electricity, our goal is to all but eliminate your electric bill if we can. It's not always doable, but you'll always have a customer charge. You're going to be charged for being connected to the grid, so the utility company can pay for their infrastructure and transformers to get to your location. But for the most part, any kilowatt hour charge on your bill, we look to eliminate that. So you'll have ongoing electric savings from going solar. There's also a 26% tax credit. That was initially set to scale down this year, and at the last minute, at the end of last year, they extended it for another 2 years. And so the 26% tax credit will continue throughout this year, and then as well as next year, and it'll start to slide down the year after that. And that's a credit. That's not a deduction. That's a dollar for dollar credit in your pocket. So if you're paying taxes, that's 26% of the cost of the solar array. So for example, you had a solar system that costs $100,000, you would get a $26,000 tax credit or back to you when you file your taxes. Great return on investment. I'm going to show you some examples of that in just a minute. It does increase your property value, but it does not increase your property tax bill here in Maryland. And of course, it has a positive impact on the environment. All right, so understanding the incentives a little deeper, 26% tax credit, we talked about that. That's a tax credit, dollar for dollar money in your pocket. Currently at 26% for this year. It'll be at 26% in 2022. And unless there's no new legislative changes, it will drop down to 22% in 2023, and then drop down to 10% the year after that in 2024, and go away for residential customers. But it will remain for at 10% for farmers and businesses. And business owners can also depreciate solar. Typically, solar falls into the 5-year maker's depreciation schedule, but with the accelerated depreciation, you can take all of the federal depreciation in year 1. And so usually what we see in Maryland is a lot of business owners or farmers who have tax liability can get 60 or 70% of their money back in year 1. And then, of course, there are also solar renewable energy certificates that you can earn from having solar. Now, these are a little bit different. This has got nothing to do with net metering. It doesn't matter whether you use the electricity or you don't use the electricity. As long as you generate renewable energy from solar, you earn these renewable energy certificates, or SRECs. Every time your solar array creates 1,000 kilowatt hours, you earn 1 energy certificate. And those energy certificates are valuable. They're almost analogous to trading a stock on E-Trade, and they go up based on supply and demand. And the supply side of the equation is the amount of solar that gets installed in Maryland. So the more solar that gets installed in Maryland, the lower the value of the SRECs are. The demand side is our legislative branch who passed legislation to increase our renewable renewable portfolio here in Maryland, which what that is in Maryland, our legislators have decided that X amount of energy that is produced in Maryland needs to come from solar. And your utility companies, they can go out and either build their own solar farms if they want to generate that renewable energy, or they can just buy or pay you for the energy you're creating with your solar. And so Maryland has, in the last years, become very aggressive in their goals. Last year, the year before, they passed the Clean Energy Jobs Act, and hopefully we're going to continue to see legislation that increases the requirements on renewable energy in Maryland. And so what that does is it increases the value of those SRECs. The last time I looked, they were trading at around $70 or so for a Maryland SREC. They do fluctuate, like I said, based on supply and demand, but that is additional income that you'll get from owning a solar array. All right. Here's a quick slide that just shows you, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but if you're a business owner or a farmer, and you're looking to invest in a piece of equipment for tax benefits, if you were to invest in solar and you spent $96,000 on solar, you would get a $24,960 tax benefit. If, however, you were to buy any other piece of equipment that you could only take the depreciation on, in order to get that same tax benefit, you would have to spend $192,000 on the equipment. And so this just, without going into too much detail, shows you that the benefit of solar is that it is subsidized through tax incentives. Not only do you get the federal tax credit, but you also get depreciation. So other than most other pieces of equipment, you get twice the tax benefit by going solar. All right, let's look a little bit about the investment. I'm going to show you a couple different examples here on what solar would look like if you're looking to invest in solar on your home or for your business. Keep in mind, these are samples. These don't hold me to these numbers, but it'll give you a ballpark figure of what the solar would look like for you. This is a residential sample I'm going to show you here, which is a 10 kW system. That's about 30 panels, maybe 25 panels, solar panels that would cover enough electricity for your average size home for an entire year. The total cost of a 10 kW system right now is approximately $32,000. You would get a federal tax credit, that's the 26% of $8,328 back, making your net cost for that system about $23,000. So you get a $32,000 system for about $23,000. It would save you approximately $1,600 a year on your electric bill. And it'll take about 13 years for that to pay for itself with an ROI of 9.3%, which is probably better than you're getting in most banks right now. But here's the real picture of what solar can do for you. If you continue to live in your home with that size system and you choose not to go solar, you're going to spend about $68,000 over a 30-year period for your electricity. However, for that same 30 years worth of electricity, by going solar, you could pay $23,000. So solar would save you about $44,000 on your average home over a 30-year period. And so we oftentimes get people ask us, well, solar's expensive. And the reality is solar is much less expensive for a long-term investment than it is over the long term. There are upfront costs or the need to raise capital to do so, but it pays for itself very quickly, as you can see, and saves homeowners a ton of money over the long term. I want to show you a commercial or agricultural example because this will give you an idea of the combination of the tax credit and the depreciation and what that could do for a business or a small farm. This system size example is a 50 kW. So you could think of that probably 5 times the size of a house, maybe a small business, a veterinary hospital, something of that size. The total cost is approximately $131,600. They'd get a $34,000 tax credit. They would take another $34,000, and this is net tax savings because you can depreciate almost all of the you can depreciate 87% of the $131,000. So you get another $34,000 in depreciation savings, making your net cost of this solar system $62,000 or $63,000. So you're buying a $131,000 solar array, but your net cost is $62,000. It would save this business almost $7,000 a year in their electric savings, a payback period of about 9 years with a return of investment of about 15.3%. And here's what it looks like over a 30-year period. 30-year cost without going solar, this business would pay about $289,000 for their electricity. 30-year cost with solar, they're going to pay about $63,000 for that same amount of electricity, saving them over $226,000. And I'm not including in here grants. There are also grants that are available that you can get in Maryland. There's a commercial grant, and there's also a USDA grant that you can apply for, which is competitive. But we have a fairly successful track record of getting the USDA grant, and you add that, that's another 25% of the cost of the system. We oftentimes see farmers and businesses get 75% of their money back in year one. So really a great investment financially as well as environmentally. At Paradise Energy Solutions, all of our systems that we sell come with what we call our 10/10 guarantee. And if you're looking to go solar, whether it's with Paradise Energy Solutions or any other solar provider out there, this is just important information to know as you compare different companies. Is number one, we offer a 10-year system production guarantee. So what that means is if we tell you that system is going to generate 100,000 kilowatt hours a year, we guarantee it. And if it doesn't, we'll write you a check for the difference. Something very unique to us. Obviously, all of our workmanship comes with a 10-year workmanship warranty. We also have a 10-year of system monitoring. So you'd be able to monitor your system on your computer, your tablet, your iPhone, wherever you wanted to. And we monitor it too to make sure that it's up and running all the time. And so those are some of the guarantees that you should expect from any reputable company. All right, here, trivia alert number 2. Here we go. This is a question that is, the prize is a digital weather station. So who knows the answer to the amount of energy that comes from the sun in a single hour is enough to power the entire world for how long? Days, weeks, months, years?
We've got 2 days.
2
Lydia
days.
Liker has said 2 days.
100
Gary Seibel
years.
said 100 years.
It's in between those two.
We've got 50 years in 1 day and 500,000 years.
Come on, kids. It's still, we're getting closer.
Joe Herzog, 20.
1 year. Who said that? Abby.
Abby, we have a winner.
Abby, congratulations. Abby, you are the proud winner of a digital weather station, and we'll make sure that we get to you. The answer is 1 year. The amount of energy that comes from the sun in a single hour is enough to power the world for an entire year. We haven't figured out how to capture that sun without losses to that extent, but we are hopefully getting closer and better at doing so. And that's why you see, many times, and let me get to the I'm going to jump to our common questions now, because one of the questions we always get is whether or not my solar panels are going to become outdated. And I'm jumping a little bit around here, but it's a good segue to the trivia question. Is that, when we started installing solar panels in 2009, the solar panels were about 12 or 14% efficient. That means they would capture 12 to 14% of the light that hit the panel. So the rest of it was lost to reflection or the inability to get it absorbed through the glass or whatnot. But nonetheless, we were at 12 to 14% efficiency in 2009, and the panels we use today are about 20% efficient. So we've made great gains. We've almost seemed to have hit a plateau. It's been at this 18 to 20% for several years now in terms of the efficiency of panels. But what that means is that for you, all it means is you need less space for the same amount of panel. You can get more energy out of a smaller area. But the technology has really stayed the same with regards to the solar panels. The panels themselves haven't changed much. The sun hits them, they create energy, that's what they do. The inverters and the communication and the technology that supports it, that has changed and become more sophisticated over the years. Like I said, inverters now, they connect to the internet so you can see what your panels are doing, how much they're producing. So that has changed over the years, but the solar panels themselves really haven't changed that much. All right. Jumping to common question number 1, what maintenance is required? We ask our customers really not to do anything to maintain their panels. We do it for them, obviously, particularly if they're on your roof. They're high up. We don't want you to hurt yourselves. The nice thing about most of our systems is there's no moving parts. They just sit there and they work. Unless you have solar trackers, which we don't really recommend, you're better off just adding a few more panels to get extra production if that's what you're looking for. But the solar panels themselves, they just sit there and they work. And we account for weather patterns in your specific location. So when we size your system, we look at the last 20 years of weather patterns, and we account for snow days, we account for pollen, we account for a little bit of soiling, and the rain will wash them and clean them off. So if your panels are on your roof, we encourage you just to leave them alone. And if they're on the ground, for the most part, we encourage you to leave them alone with maybe two caveats. If you had growth, weeds, or anything growing around there, you'll want to make sure that the weeds don't cast a shade on the panels. And if you wanted to take a hose to the panels to hose them down, if they got pollen or soiling on them, you're welcome to do that. But other than that, we encourage you to leave them alone. How durable are the solar panels? They're relatively durable, almost like the windshield of a car. We don't encourage you to walk on them, but you could. When we install them, sometimes you have to stand around the frames. They're very durable. They can take quite a beating, but you most certainly will want to get insurance on your solar array for acts of God or tornadoes or massive hailstorms or anything like that. Can my solar system work in a power outage? This is an evolving question, but the simple answer is if you don't have batteries, the answer is no. And that's a requirement by the National Electric Code that if the grid goes off or your utility for some reason the power goes out, your solar has to turn off as well. And it's for the safety of the linemen working on the lines that we don't backfeed electricity and kill them as they're trying to fix it. And so your solar system will automatically shut off if the power goes down, and the inverters will continuously be checking to see when the electricity comes back on, and when it does, they'll turn your solar system back on for you automatically, and so you don't have to worry about that. Now, of course, there are backup solutions like batteries and generators that you could use to get you through those times. Will my solar system become outdated in several years? We just talked about that. And can you add batteries to your solar system? The answer is yes. You can add it to your solar array when you're doing the solar, and you can also add batteries after the fact as well. So if that's something that you were thinking about doing down the road, you can most certainly do that too. I would say that the incentives are probably higher now, and so if it is something you want to do, you probably want to do it with the solar array. All right, I know all of you have posted a ton of questions. I've seen them come in. We're going to get to those in just a minute. But first, I just want to show you a couple pictures and then maybe open it up and just give Joe a moment or two here to share his experience going solar and working with Paradise. Here is Crystal's solar array in Mount Airy at 33.6 kW on 2 roofs that we recently installed. Here's a picture of Palmer Animal Hospital out in Myersville, a 49.5 kW. This is in line with the example I showed you on the commercial costs there. Every year in Myersville, Dr. Palmer would loves to people come by and take a look at his system, so don't hesitate to stop by. And then here is Woodvale Farms out in Frederick, Maryland, almost a 87.75 kW system. Joe, if you want to just take a moment and kind of share your thoughts on solar, how this worked out for you and what your experience has been like.
Happy to. Well, I'm a giant fan of solar. I have zero regrets, except that I didn't go sooner. I've been online with solar 3 years, and I wish I had done it a while back. It is an absolute financial no-brainer. It is an environmental no-brainer. And, you know, if you've got a good roof or a good place to put a ground-mounted system, I honestly can't think of a good reason not to do it. The environmental, I mean, being able to turn on your heaters and your lights and run things and knowing that you're not burning any fossil fuels To me, that's huge. We have had two issues, I think, in the 3 years that we've been online. Paradise knew about them before we did, and they fixed them. There's no cost. We had some mechanical failures. We were down for a little while, and then they got us up and running. We do have an app that is provided. Solar Edge, I think, is the name of it. So I can go online anytime, day or night, and see what our production is. What are we doing right this minute? What did we do yesterday? What are we doing year to date? So you can sort of see how your solar production's going. Our electric bills are running about, well, let me back up. So our solar system powers 3 houses, 3 barns, and the rest of the farm. And our electric bill is like $13 a month generally. And that's the cost to connect to the grid. So we're not in a very unusual situation. We may have a little bit of an electric bill, but generally they're about $13 or $15, I forget. So it absolutely works. No maintenance per se we've had to do. If it snows, you just wait for the snow to melt. Let's see what else. I'm happy if anybody wants to come see what our system looks like. I'm happy to show it to you, and I'm happy to talk to you about our experience. I'm not an expert, but solar fits so well with our business plan and our business model and our focus on environmental stewardship. So we do not have batteries. We just have we don't have a backup system to answer that question that just came through. We've also not needed batteries since we've been up and running. We've not had any outages. My 2 cents on it would be get a generator instead of the batteries, but I don't know that much about, honestly, the current cost and pros and cons of batteries. But when we made our decision, it didn't make good sense for us. And so we don't have batteries. I'm happy to, if people want to contact me or if they want to come by, I'm happy to tell it like it is and just show it to them. I will say this, the SREC or the SRECs, Solar Renewable Energy Certificates, we made our economic decision to go forward without any real knowledge of what that would be worth. And so our ROI was going to be 6.4 years or something of that sort. We had a nice tax credit. If you are a profitable business, that tax credit is huge. And then of course, depreciation, giant, and the absence of electric bills, it all goes together. The SRECs, I was just looking at our records. Last year, we made almost $7,800, so $7,776 for doing nothing, basically, for making solar energy. And that, as I understand, Warren, keep me honest on this, but that's the cost that utilities have to pay to buy our certificate so that they can satisfy government regulations for producing X percentage of their energy in a renewable manner. Did I get that right?
You got it exactly right,
Okay.
Joe.
So anyway, for literally just having a system, we got a check for $77.76. And I think it's, I think the demand for these SRECs is going up. So maybe it'll be even higher this year. But when you factor it all in, I mean, the return on investment is just, it's basically a no-brainer.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. Very kind words. Great having you as a customer. Good to hear that your experience has been exceptional. At Paradise Energy Solutions, our focus is to make sure that our customers are raving fans, and we go above and beyond to make sure that if you do decide to go solar with us, that you too will be a raving fan. But if it's not with us and you decide to go solar, you're going to reap the benefits that Joe just talked about as well, the tax savings, the depreciation, the SRECs, and the environmental benefit that it has. It really is, I would say, the number one regret we hear from all of our customers is that they didn't do it sooner.
So, Warren, can I throw one last thing in?
Absolutely.
So when you get really serious about this, I would talk to your solar company about the installation process. It's not insignificant, but and ours, as you saw from the photo, ours is roof mounted on our arena. And it's a big installation. The Paradise installation team, they were ridiculously kind and helpful in doing the installation, because when we have like a clinic or training going on indoors, you can't be installing the solar panels. You just can't. So they worked around our schedule and they bent over backwards. It was amazing. So anyway, that's just one of those things that when you think about it and you make your decision or you're getting close, fully understand what the installation is going to look like.
Great point. Thanks, Joe. And we do that. So if you have a business that's operating, we understand that. We know how important it is to you to continue to operate. And so we'll work around your schedule, of course. Mm-hmm. Great stuff there, Joe. Thank you very much for that. All right, now I'm going to jump into the questions that we have.
A ton of good questions, Warren.
Yes, excellent questions in here. So from John, are there ag solar co-ops available to farmers in an area that can share in the power generated without sending it to the grid? That way more farmers could share in the production and the power generated. Unfortunately not. However, there is an incentive available to farmers, nonprofits, and government entities. It's not really an incentive, but it's a benefit that only farmers, nonprofits, and government entities can do in Maryland, and that is what they call meter aggregation and virtual meter aggregation. And so if you have multiple meters, you have one meter on your barn, another meter on another barn, they allow you to put a solar on just one of those meters and have it cover all of your other meters that are on your property. Or not even, they could be at another location as long as it's the same business and the same utility. So that is a benefit that's only available to farmers and nonprofits that you can do.
Well, that answers Carolyn's question too.
Yes, it does. So there you go, Carolyn. If a barn and a home are on two separate meters, can a barn fund both properties? Yes, they can. As long as you're a farmer, Schedule F, or a nonprofit, you can do so. Gary, my SRECs have ranged from 160 to 6 over the last several years. So you've had solar for a while, Gary. But in 2015 or so, they're actually a little higher than that. They've been higher than 160. And what happened is Maryland learned from their mistakes, but they allowed a lot of solar developers from out of state to participate in the SREC markets. And what happened is we saw solar energy credits really plummet from $180 to $4 almost in a few week period back in 2015, 16, if I remember correctly. And then they started to work themselves up. But Maryland has since passed legislation that it wasn't last year, it was the year before, the Clean Energy Jobs Act, or maybe it was last year, looking to get Maryland to 50% renewable energy by 2030. And then in last year's legislative session, which didn't go anywhere because of COVID, Governor Hogan was pushing to increase our renewable energy to 100% by 2040. And so we have exciting legislation that could even drive SRECs up even more in the current legislative session. And as states demand more renewable energy and faster, the higher those SRECs are going to go in value. And so SRECs are not guaranteed. We don't guarantee them because they fluctuate from market demands that are out of our control. But we can give you a good sense of where they are now and what they're going to be, at least in the short term. But it is up to our legislators to continue to drive those up. What is the cost of maintaining the solar system? Well, there's no cost, but there actually are a couple, maybe one or two hidden costs that you should know about that not everybody's aware of. That if you're on a really remote area and you want your system connected to the internet so you can monitor it and we can monitor it, there might be the expense of getting cell phone connectivity or other type of connectivity there. If we can't get a cell, usually if we can get a cell signal, it's not expensive. But if we can't get a cell signal, we've got other technologies, but they can add cost to your system if you're very remote in order to be able to monitor that. Other than that, there's really no cost to you in terms of maintaining it, other than the area around it. If you're a ground mount, make sure it doesn't get shaded. Don't grow new trees in front of it. Don't park vehicles in front of your ground mounts, but just leave it alone. We'll take care of the maintenance for you. After the 10-year period with our 10-10-10, you'll have the option of extending your monitoring so you can do that. I don't know what the prices will be in 10 years, but that's available to everybody. All right. Michael, can you tell us the pros and cons of leasing versus purchasing? That is an excellent question. So everything I've talked about so far has been about purchasing. And as you can see, there are many benefits to purchasing. And I'm going to tell you that if you're in Maryland, which is a very solar friendly state, and you are a business that is profitable and you pay taxes, then it makes all the sense in the world for you to purchase as opposed to lease. However, if you're a nonprofit and that you either have the capital, the upfront capital, or could raise the capital to purchase it, then purchasing makes sense. If, however, you're a nonprofit or you don't want to use your capital or tie up capital or can't access capital, but you would still like to go solar for the environmental benefits and for savings, we do have options. One of them, which is a lease, and we can do leases. We have a sister company that does them. We only do them on system sizes that are 100 kW or larger, and we basically, you get into solar for no money down, and we try and offer you an electric rate that is the same or lower than what you're paying now. But it doesn't always pencil out, so they need to be larger systems, at least 100 kW. But there are companies that would do smaller systems. But if you're a nonprofit, we also have 3 other options available for financing. One is a operating lease through a local a bank called, well, their local regional bank, Univest Capital, and they work specifically with solar, and they have an operating lease. And what they do is they take advantage of the tax credits and depreciation, and they pass those credits back to you in the terms of the cost of capital. And so if you're a nonprofit, you can finance your solar at almost between 1% and 2% through Univest Capital. We can get that set up for you. So really no cost of capital, 1% to 2%, and you can go solar if you're nonprofit. And then there's 2 other options for nonprofits. One is called the PACE program, which you can finance it over a 20 or a 30-year period, and you pay it back through your property taxes, and it allows you to have the long term, so you'll see savings really from year 1 with that program. And then finally, there's a program called Collective PACE or Collective Sun for nonprofits, which is similar to the Univest option in that they share the tax credits with you. And basically, a nonprofit would get a 12% discount on the solar, but they have to raise the money themselves. So they have to come up with 88% of the cost of the system up front, and it's structured through a lease, and then they own it. So if you're a nonprofit, there are leases and a variety of different financing structures that we can make work depending on your goals. But if you're in Maryland and you're profitable and you have access to capital, you really want to own the system. It's a much better financial investment than leasing it. And some things to think about at the end of leases is what happens at the end of the lease. Is the company going to remove the panels? Is there an option for a buyout? So those are just some things to think about. All right. Can you get 30 years from a solar panel array? What's the life of the equipment? And once you own a system, what's the annual cost of upkeep? Excellent question, John. So yes, most solar panels come with a 25 or a 30-year warranty. Most of them are in a 25-year warranty. And it's a power guarantee from the manufacturer that that panel is going to continue to work or produce energy for the next 25 years. Solar panels they degrade a little bit, about 0.5% a year. but you still should be producing about 80 or 90% of the power when you get to your 25. Realistically, you should expect your solar array to last 25 to 40 years, if not longer. Obviously, 40 years from now, it's not going to be producing the same as what it will in year one. But you should take that into account in your financial analysis, that slight degradation of the panels. But you should expect 30 years out of your solar array. All right. Moving along, next question. What about dirt, dust, and snow? Yep, we talked a little bit about that. We take that into account. We look at 20-year meteorological data sets, and we know for the most part how much it's going to snow and how much it's going to rain and how many cloudy days. But more importantly, we offer you a production guarantee. So even if it's cloudy for 5 months in a row, you don't have to worry if you go with Paradise Energy Solutions, because if your solar doesn't produce what we promised you it would, we'll write you a check for the difference. We try and make it take the risk out of the investment as much as possible. There's a couple things, really two things, that we can't guarantee or take the risk out of, and that is the value of the SRECs, and the other one is whether or not you're going to get the USDA grant. We get the majority of them that we apply for, but those are that's a competitive grant and we can't guarantee it. What are the pros and cons of roof versus ground panels? That's a great question. It all depends. There's pros and cons to both. It really depends on your situation and your location. So in an ideal world, putting them on your roof, they're out of the way. They don't take up land, they don't take up space, and it's usually close to the meter or the area that we're going to connect to the utility company. And so it's usually a lower cost as well to go on the roof. So on a roof, it's close to where we're going to connect, it's out of the way, and it's a lower cost. The pros to being on the ground is that, sometimes your roof doesn't always face south. Your roof might be, or your ideal roof might be facing north, and we don't want to put panels facing north. To answer that very first trivia question, if we're here in the northern hemisphere, so we want our panels facing towards the equator, which is south of here. That's the ideal location. If you're in Sydney, Australia, you'll want them facing to the equator, which would be north. But if you have a roof and your roof is facing north or northwest, that's not ideal. And so you'll want to put them on the ground. And when we put them on the ground, we can not only get the ideal orientation, but we can get the ideal tilt. So sometimes on the ground, we use less panels than we would on the roof because we can put them in the ideal location. But then there's also costs associated with ground mounts that increase the cost. Trenching, how far do we need to trench, wire runs, as well as the actual racking material of mounts that go into the ground. Those cost a little more. So ground mounts are typically a little more expensive. Sometimes you'll see savings if we can get the correct orientation because we're using fewer panels. But it really depends on your situation. They're both great options, but one of them is probably going to make more sense from a production and a return on investment perspective for you.
Hey, Warren, there's a related question way further down. You might as well answer it now. It's about putting solar panels in horse pastures or any livestock, really.
Yes, we've done that. We've put them out there. We've put them with cows. We've done several systems out there. Usually goats, we don't encourage you to have goats on them because they climb on them. But we've other livestock, usually they just ignore it. You can also fence it off. It's not a problem. Sometimes they create shade for the livestock too. So you just want to make sure that that the wiring is kept away from them. There is electricity flowing behind them. And so they're not a problem for most livestock, but you don't want any goats or anything climbing on them. Okay. Let's see, where were we here?
Do they leach any harmful chemicals?
Do they leak any harmful chemicals? No, they should not be leaking any chemicals. One of the questions we get frequently is how the solar panels are toxic when it comes to destroying them. And the truth is that they've come a long way in terms of recycling solar panels. Solar panels are made up of primarily 3 or 4 components: glass, aluminum frame, silicone, and silver. Almost all of which are now recyclable. And so recycling solar panels has come a long way, and they continue to improve that, but they should not be leaking any toxic materials at all. What about a disconnect? Absolutely. The disconnects are required, again, by the National Electric Code, and they're typically found next to your utility meter. That way the fire department know where to find them. And so there's an emergency disconnect for every solar system that gets installed. What is the output of the solar panel in DC before the inverter? That's a good question. The inverters have also become very efficient. There's a less than a 2% loss in the AC to DC ratio from the inverters, which has come a long way. Good question. Is a system disconnect possible when the grid goes down that enables the local system to continue? Yes. We don't offer that. There are some options. It's a tough question. For the most part, the answer is no, but there are some inverters that have, and I'm not even sure if we carry them anymore. There's not a huge demand for them, where if the electricity goes down, and the sun is out, you could flip a switch and there was a receptacle under the inverter you can plug in, and you could run a refrigerator, keep a refrigerator running or something during that time. So there are some options for that. But I also want to go back to Joe's comment about batteries versus generators. You have the option to put a generator in. It probably makes more sense. It'll last longer and it's less expensive. Batteries are evolving, they're getting better, but they're not there yet. If you have a natural gas line or you have diesel, it probably makes more sense, and solar can interact with that. When the grid goes down, the solar will turn off, your generator will turn back on. Batteries are evolving, they're expensive, they require maintenance, and they require replacement even. So just something to keep in mind. Okay, do you work in Mount Jackson, Virginia, Shenandoah County? Yes, we do. We actually have an office in Harrisonburg. We have a solar consultant in the Charlottesville area, and another solar consultant up in Weir's Cave, just south of Harrisonburg. And we have 2 full-time crews down there, an office, we have a presence. We've installed many systems in that area. Misty Morn plants, you can see right off the I-81 freeway. It's a great system. Yes, we do. So feel free, if you'd like to reach out to us, we'd love to help you. We are in that area. You have to beef up the roof support system to handle the weight of the panels. You may not need to, you may need to, and you may not need to. It all depends on your situation. Whenever we put solar on a roof, we have a third-party structural engineer give us a stamp of approval that that roof structure is adequate to handle the weight. So if the engineer comes back and says, you know what, you need to add support braces or something to the roof, we'll add it. Or they'll give us the approval that the roof is adequate for that. But we don't make that decision. We bring in a third-party structural engineer to help us make that decision for every roof that we put solar on. Does Joe have a backup system? No, he does not. And I agree with his comments there with the generator. And keep in mind that you're using the grid as your backup if you're net metering. During the day, you're producing extra electricity, you just send it to the grid. It's the cheapest form of backup you can use as long as they're up and running, because you're $13 a month. You send them your kilowatt hours and you take them back when you need it, and there's no loss. So, yeah. After 10 years of maintenance from Paradise, who or how is the system maintained? Well, we have systems that have been installed now for over 10 years, and we maintain them. And so we have options for that when that time comes. Batteries can be added at any time. Yes, they can. They can be done on systems that if you already have a solar system and we didn't install it and you want to add batteries, we can help you walk through that. If you're thinking about going solar and you want to add batteries, we can show you the different options that go with that as well. Does Paradise also offer solar roofers? No, we don't. I think your question is, do we offer like solar tiles, or we really haven't seen those in any form of mass production or utility. I know that Tesla has shown some videos of them working, but I just want you to think of, when you think about or you hear these things on social media of solar roofs or other materials, that currently the challenge, as I talked about earlier, is getting the light from the sun through the glass, through the silicone and into the wires. And when you start changing those materials to ceramic and other materials, it makes it even harder and less efficient. So you need much more solar roof space or solar panels to get less electricity than you would from conventional solar panels. So we really haven't seen that evolve or come out in any mass scale yet. It'll be neat when they do. Does Paradise offer or SREX an annual payout or one time? Yeah. So SREX, every time you earn 1,000 kilowatt hours, you earn one energy credit, and you could go and sell that energy credit at any time you wanted to. At Paradise Energy Solutions, we offer to sell energy credits for our customers as a service. We can usually do it for less than you can in terms of the commissions that you would pay if you did it on your own. The majority, 90+% of our customers have us manage their SREX and sell them for them. And we do it either on a quarterly basis or as the market demands. And so we try and maximize your earnings from that. And it all depends on what SREX you're going for. But it's completely up to you. You don't have to have us sell your SREX for you. You can sell them yourself. And as you create 1,000 kilowatt hours, you've got an SREX, you can go sell it.
Hey, Warren, we skipped a question. What's the lifespan of the panels? What's done at the end with end of life panels recycled? We already addressed the toxic, but anyways, recycled. Yeah. So
no, the lifespan of the panel should be 25, 40 years, even longer. But they are going to degrade over time. At the end of the life, they are recyclable, and so the components in them can be recycled. The toxic concerns have been a concern for many years, but we really haven't got to the point where a lot of solar panels are being recycled at this point, and the gains in recycling them are outpacing are catching up before the solar panels really even get recycled. And so I'm confident that by the time most of our solar panels are being recycled, the entire panel will be recyclable. But for the most part, almost all of the components in there are now recyclable. My SREX payments are deposited into my account as they are generated and sold. Okay. Yep. Joe, why isn't your system bigger? Seems you have some unused roof space that could increase your annual check.
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
So good point. We only used about 90% of the arena roof, and we have other roofs we could have used if we had wanted to, but the system was sized to take care of our demand. And again, Warren, keep me honest on this, but I don't think it's economic to produce extra energy and sell it back to Potomac Edison for a profit. Do you think that's true?
That is exactly true. You're right on, Joe. Let me just give you an example of what that is. You might be paying 12 cents a kilowatt hour all in with all your costs. And so every time your solar produces a kilowatt hour, you save 12 cents. But that 12 cents is made up of the cost of electricity and the cost to get the electricity to you. When you overproduce and you get a check back, your utility company only pays you about 7 cents a kilowatt hour, somewhere in that range. So when you get paid back, when you use the electricity that you're generating, you're taking full advantage of that 12 cents an hour that you're paying. When you get paid back, you're only getting 7 cents on that 12 cents or so, whatever that breakdown is. And so that's why we try and size the systems as close to 100% as possible, so that you maximize your investment. You can fill your roof, but then the investment starts to taper off once you start going over 100%. Great explanation, Joe.
Thanks.
Okay. Does Paradise work in other states? John, we work in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Maryland, Delaware, and Virginia, and also West Virginia in the counties that border Virginia and Maryland. So if you're any of those states, yes, we do. Can you repeat that related to meter sharing? Absolutely. So they call it virtual net metering, and it's available to nonprofits, farmers, and government entities. And it allows you to virtually aggregate or combine your meters, if you have multiple meters, into one virtual meter. So you could put solar on, for example, if we're looking at Joe's location here, I'm not sure what I'm looking at, but if you had a meter down here and a meter over here and a meter on the house and a meter over here and a meter over here, you could put one solar system on here, connect to one meter, and on his bill, the solar would go credit to all of the different meters in cascading order that you define when you set it up with the utility company.
We have four.
You have four meters. You have four meters. Okay,
and they're all
there you
over the
go.
place.
So instead of running wires from one meter to another meter or trying to combine the meters, they just do it virtually. And it doesn't even have to be on the same property. You could have these meters on different properties and aggregate towards those, as long as it's the same business. Okay, do you expect renewable energy credit incentives to increase over the course of a new administration? Would it be better to wait and see? You know, so the incentives on a federal level, we don't know what's going to happen, but I can tell you that every day that you wait, you're losing money, you're losing out, you're continuing to pay your electric bill. When you're, you know, think about owning solar as owning versus renting your home. When you own your own solar, you're in control, you own it, and you know exactly what the costs are going to be. When you're at the mercy of the utility company, you're paying a fixed cost every month that you get nothing in return for. You have no control over whether those rates go up or when they go up, how frequently they go up. You're just at mercy, and there's really nothing you can do. Your only option is not to use electricity, which really isn't an option. And so, you know, given the current administration is more solar friendly than previous administrations, but at the same time, they're also given just everything we've gone through from a COVID experience and all the government spending and the proposed 1.9 trillion, we're expecting the inflation to impact the energy markets in the near future. And that might take a few months, maybe it'll take a few years, but we are expecting to see that impact your cost of energy. And so that would increase your solar savings if you went solar. I don't know that I see any changes to the tax credit increasing above 26%. And I would say that you're probably financially better off doing solar now than you are trying to wait and see. All right, does it matter if the house or barn are separated? One is under an LLC and one is residential. So I guess for clarification purposes, if one is an LLC, I take it, is that a farm? And usually they will allow the house on the farm to aggregate with that, so then it would not matter. If it's not, and it's just a regular business, you cannot aggregate from a commercial entity to a house. Do your systems utilize micro or macro inverters? We have all different types of inverters. We offer micro inverters, we have string inverters, and then we have string inverters with optimizers. And it all depends, again, on your unique situation and what your objectives are. We'll try and give you advice on what we think makes the most sense for you. Micro inverters are typically the most expensive, but they do the best at shade mitigation. but they don't do the best in terms of return of investment. So it depends. If you have a small amount of space and you've got a little bit of shade, microinverters might make sense for you. If you're looking at a larger system, SolarEdge inverters and optimizers probably make the most sense. We also, and then if you're on a ground mount, then probably just a string inverter would make the most sense from a return on investment. But we offer all types of inverters. Can ground-mounted panels go in a pasture with horses? Yes. We have multiple business LLCs on our farm with 3 separate meters. Are we able to spread across multiple meters with this unique setup? That's a very interesting question. I don't know if the answer to that. I would have to look into that in more detail, but would gladly help you figure that out. Yes, we're in the Shenandoah Valley. We're not in Florida. I wish we were. Limitations on using batteries with 3-phase power. That's another question that I don't know the answer to, and I'd have to get back to you here with 3-phase power, whether or not there's limitations on that. I don't believe there are, but I'm not our battery expert here, and so I'm going to have to get back to SK on that question. Isn't the expected life of panels about 20 to 30 years? Yes, it is. But keep in mind that the panels, usually 25 years, almost all of them come with 25-year warranties. Some of them come with 30-year warranties, but they just sit there and they work. They don't have moving parts. So you should honestly expect them to last at least that amount of time. There are experiments in Arizona in which panels are elevated and shade-loving crops are growing underneath them. That is absolutely correct. There's additional costs, though, when we raise the panels off the ground. The higher we go, the more robust the racking and mounting needs to be, because we have to abide by wind and all of the regulations in that area. And so it drives the cost up. The higher you put the panels, the higher the cost goes. Definitely not goats. Yep. Do panels create a fire hazard? No more than any other appliance you have in your home, your refrigerator, anything else that you have plugged in. There's electricity going through that. There's no fire hazard from panels. However, there are requirements that we have to abide by. If your building did catch on fire and the fire department needed to get on the roof and vent the roof, they have to be able to come in there, turn the system off, have it shut off at the panel level, and all of the systems that we install meet all of those requirements. Do we work in Garrett County? How far out is Garrett County?
It's Western Maryland.
Yeah, is that where, Deep Creek area?
Yes.
Yeah, and we're not all the way out there. We work, we're in all the way out to, I guess, Hagerstown and just a little bit west of Hagerstown, but that's it. Is there a job too small? No, but it does scale. We've done solar panels that are solar systems that are as small as 2 kW, maybe 6 or 7 or 8 panels, but you really get the financial payback increases as the size of the systems go up. How do we charge for our services? Well, when you buy the system, it includes the 10-10-10 that we talked about. After the 10-10-10, we have some programs that you could enter for ongoing service and monitoring on an annual basis, or you could just pay our rate for sending out a truck and a crew to work on your system if you needed us to. But for the first 10 years, you'll have peace of mind that there'll be no additional costs other than what you paid for the system. Will you mount on a corrugated metal roof? Great question. Yes. For the most part, we'll install it on any roof, but we do install it on corrugated metal roofs, standing seam metal roofs, asphalt shingles, and we've even been known to do, we installed a system last year on a rounded roof, which was a unique and innovative challenge for us. But cedar shake might be one of the few that we don't, but any commercial roof, corrugated, standing seam, or shingle, we can. Is there a possibility of creating a roof out of panels to cover an arena 100 by 200 without uprights on the inside? No. The panels add about 2.5 pounds per square foot of weight load, and so you need to have an adequate structure to support it underneath. Is this presentation being recorded for on-demand playback at a later date? Absolutely. Crystal will be circulating this on or putting it on her YouTube channel, and we'll be posting it as well. So yes. Is it feasible to create a large system to sell back to the grid only as opposed to personal use? It depends what your objectives are. Yes, it is. So you can, if you have hundreds of acres and you're thinking about putting solar on it to sell back to the grid, you can do it. You're not going to get nearly as much per kilowatt hour. You're probably going to get closer to the 2 cents per kilowatt hour selling it back to the grid if you do that. So you really need hundreds of acres and millions, hundreds of millions probably in an investment to make it a worthwhile investment. Yep. If I have an abundance of roof area, can I produce additional power and give or sell or trade with a neighbor who doesn't have? No, you cannot do that. Unfortunately, you can't give it to a neighbor. You can only use it for your location or sell it back to the grid. Does the power company offset any install costs? There's a Maryland state grant that you get that's not from the power company, but it's from the Maryland Energy Administration. For residential projects, you get $1,000 back, and commercial projects, depends on the size of the system, but you'll probably get a couple grand, maybe 3,000 or 4,000, depending on the size of your system back, that come from the state of Maryland as a grant. And then each utility, Delmarva Power has a grant, but that's in Delaware. I'm not in our area here in Maryland from the utility, but there are those commercial grants that are available. All right. Can you send me a copy of the slides? We will have a, yes, to answer that, yes, we can email you, Therese, a copy of a PDF of the slide presentation, as well as you'll be able to watch the recording over again. It is being played back. Are there portable solar systems that could provide power for horse shows? Unfortunately, not that I'm aware of or that we do. I know that solar power generators are available, but you really got to rely on it being a sunny day and that you have sufficient amount of them to generate the electricity that you're going to need. How do you mitigate damage due to lightning? All of our systems are grounded, just like every other electrical component in your house, and so we connect to your grounding rod, and the other mitigation is insurance. We have projects in Allegheny County.
Warren, you're getting teased by your colleague. You are in Garrett County. Warren's from the Eastern Shore.
Yes. Thank you, Brian, for clarifying.
So Karen Engel, who asked the question, if you're still on, if not, I'll follow up with Karen afterwards. But she's the one that asked the question.
No, thank you, Brian, for posting that.
Good questions, everyone. Yes, really good questions.
Fantastic. To clarify, this will be available on demand. Yep. Thank you. I got that about that. There you go, Karen. Yep.
Greenhouses. Systems that would work well on greenhouses. That's
so greenhouses typically don't have the structural integrity for the solar array. So usually, we put them on the ground or on adjacent buildings, and we've done that in several locations. We're actually currently installing one here on the Eastern Shore for a company called How Sweet It Is. They sell produce and everything else under the sun, and they have greenhouses, and so we're still installing their second system. And we did one in Southern Maryland a couple of years ago that went on a barn that was adjacent to the greenhouses. But typically greenhouses don't have the support systems adequate to hold the weight of the solar panels.
Any other questions? Well, Warren, this has been great. And most everybody stayed on for the entire thing. So I think that means we were successful.
Absolutely. And just one last point, I just want to point out, if anybody would like to sign up, if you go to this bit.ly address, and we can send this out to everybody, bit.ly/MD Horse Solar, you can sign up and you will get 15 bite-sized videos, one each day, just educational videos on solar. So if you want to learn more about solar in an easy bite-sized way, just go to that email address and sign up, and we'll send you a video, 15 separate videos.
We have a great question, Warren, about insurance. And I mean, I can tell you that the first thing I did after ours was installed was to call my insurance agent, and she needed all the specs and information on the solar system.
Yeah, you definitely want to insure the system and add it on to your current, if it's for your residents, your homeowners. Many times homeowners insurance policies will already have adequate coverage to include the solar. We show you when you look at solar with us, and if I could just take a minute to kind of describe the process, because we didn't talk about that. If you are interested in finding out what solar looks like for you, let us know. We come to your location. There's absolutely no cost involved, no pressure, just an educational opportunity for you. We'll take about 15 minutes to half an hour at your location. We'll take pictures, we'll take measurements, we'll look at your electric bill, and then 3 or 4 days later, we'll have a very detailed proposal for you that will show you exactly what solar would look like for your location. And it'll include in there, obviously, a picture of what your location will look like with solar on it, the complete financial breakdown, as well as a cash flow analysis, a 30-year cash flow analysis that'll show you exactly where you'll be year by year, each one in terms of paying for the system. And what we do show you in there is we include the cost of insurance, what that's going to look like. So we give you a very conservative look on that.
Hey,
but it's not very expensive. Yep.
Also, a very good question that we did not address, and I think it's also an important question in terms of leasing versus owning. The question is, how do panels impact home sales? And I know if they're leased, they can botch a home sale.
Yes, they can. We actually did a webinar. That is a fantastic question. We did a webinar sometime last year with a real estate agent who owns solar, and his specialty is selling homes with solar. And he told us that they really cringe when they see homes or properties with solar, because first of all, so many real estate agents don't really understand solar. And if there's a vast difference between selling a property with leased solar. So here's the downside to leasing, is that if you sell your property and you have leased solar on there, the buyer or the prospective buyer has to assume that lease. So they're going into a home where, and usually leases that are not done through us, but other companies have escalators in there. And so the price goes up year after year after year that you're paying for electricity. So you might lease solar on your home and get a savings from the get-go, but 5 years in, you're paying more for electricity on your solar lease than you would had you stayed with the utility. And now you're trying to sell your home to somebody who's going to assume the remainder of that lease. They're going to take it over, paying more electricity for that. And sometimes you're also you're not selling your property to people who are looking to get into debt. A story he explained is a retired couple were buying a house, and they were buying it cash, and they don't want any more debt. They're in retirement and they don't want to take on a lease. And so it really killed the entire deal. So leasing can have negative impacts on your ability, not your ability, you just got to find the right buyer who's willing to accept that lease. When you own the system, it's very different. Now you have an asset on the house that transfers to the new owner, and they're buying a house without an electric bill. And so you will get more for your house with solar on it if you own it. And you just have a little bit more of a challenge. You got to find someone who's going to assume that lease when you sell it. And typically those leases are very tightly structured, almost impossible to get out of. You'll probably pay more for trying to get out of the lease than you will for the house, the way they have them so structured. So leasing can create challenges when it comes to selling.
And a really good question to wrap us up from our president, Neil Agate. Do your warranties transfer to the new owner of the property?
Yes, they do. Absolutely.
So, and then another question, we got a couple minutes. How do you protect ground panels in a field with animals from damage related to animal or predator activity?
Yeah, certain animals for some reason like to eat wire, and so we have ways to protect the wiring that's behind the panels on ground mounts, and so they can't get to it. Either chicken wire or other guards specifically for that to prevent them from getting there. But if you have animals that, I mean, you can always fence it off. And when it comes to ground mounts, sometimes you don't have a choice. You have to put a fence around it. Some jurisdictions will require you to, depending on the size of the system, either in terms of the physical size or the voltage size, might require you to put a fence around it. So you can fence around it, and you may have to fence around it or one or a couple ways. Or also, if you're just talking about small critters that typically eat wires, we by default, we install protective guards to not let them get to that.
Right. Sounds good. Doesn't look like we have any other questions. So I guess that's a wrap.
Yeah.
So thank you, everyone, for participating. Again, thank you to Paradise. And you, if you were here, if you registered today, whether or not you showed up, you will get an email link to this when it's available. Thank you all for joining us. And if you're not a member of the Horse Council, please consider joining the Horse Council. And you can email me directly if you want to learn more about joining the Horse Council. I will put my address up quickly. So thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Greatly appreciate your time and attention.
Mhm.